Well, I think with the respective time, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know a couple more people were coming, but it's already 6:31. We have a pretty full agenda and a lot of discussion, so I'm going to go ahead. It's 6:31. I call this meeting to order and declare a quorum. Welcome back, everyone. Happy back to school, August, all of that, back to school, August, and all of that. Let's take this time to review the minutes, and we can go from there with next steps. And it was within the email. I can also present it if someone feels the need to, for me to, but it's within the email that I sent.
The one recommendation that I had for the minutes is if we could maybe just add, I know usually we add kind of who was present and who was absent. I know I wasn't able to make the July meeting. So, and I don't know, because I wasn't there, I don't know who else was there or who wasn't there. So I don't know if we can just add that to the top.
Sure. Present. Okay. Look back at those notes. Okay. With those changes, I motion to approve the minutes. Show of hands. Okay. I always forget this part. Minutes approved. Yeah, that's what I thought. Show of hands. Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Okay, so today what I'd like to do is to provide a couple of, last meeting we broke into subgroups to discuss either the metrics spreadsheet or the parent resource guide. Those were the two subgroups. So I know Kelly, when she hops on, was going to share about the metrics spreadsheet and the update from there. But I am glad to talk, and then whoever was with me, I think Susanna, you were within my committee with me. There were the only two members. Touch base just about what we talked about with the parent resource guide for the town of Matthews. So to refresh, at our last meeting, and I want to make sure I'm not, it looks like some are frozen. I'm okay. Can everyone see me okay? Thumbs up. Okay. For our parent resource guide, we came up with essential questions that we could connect with the spreadsheet to help guide parents with looking for the information. So if the question was, at my school, I'm concerned about parent partnership or volunteering, we started thinking about different sections that could exist on the parent guide to help them navigate the spreadsheet better. Demographics, student life, and anyone that was within my subgroup with me, feel free to chime in. But that is what we started with, was creating those questions to help navigate the spreadsheet in a smoother manner and to help guide parents into their thinking. Did I miss anything else from my group that was with it? My summarizing is just that great. I'm doubtful, but it sounds good. Okay. And Kelly, Jenny, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, no, you summarized perfectly. The only thing we left off with was just, coming back after brainstorming some things that we could add to the list.
Yes. And so I spoke with Kelly. Thank you for that. Other things that we're hoping to add to the list, we were going to think about and come back with additional thoughts other than the guiding questions on how to navigate the spreadsheet. What else could be included as helpful tidbits? That's exactly right, that we were helping to add. And then Kelly was going to share on behalf of the metrics group, and she's not here quite yet, but Adam and Jay and whoever else was on that committee, do you mind just giving a snapshot of what you all discussed at the subgroups from our July meeting with the metrics?
Yeah, so what we decided was we needed the metrics we had gotten directly from CMS. Those were not in the spreadsheet yet. And so Kelly said she was going to find those and take those and put those in the spreadsheet, because those would be when we're looking for a uniform house style of how we're going to present data, it made sense to us to start with the CMS, whatever format they use, and then the data we've received from the non-public schools, make that match the same format as CMS. Because as we all know, since we all did the best we could with the information we were getting, some of the data from column to column is just in different formats. So we wanted to get the CMS format and then just replicate that. And I don't know what, so that was, Kelly was going to do that for the first wave. And then I volunteered Adam as well, then to do the next wave, which is then to make the non-public schools match those formats.
And I took the CMS data that was provided, and I've already kind of taken it and stripped it down and aligned all of it. So I actually have a spreadsheet that has all that stuff aligned in Adam's vision of how I would play with the data. So, we'll match that stuff up and compare. I need to make sure that I have the correct sheet, correct version that is all of the collected stuff that we have. Because I know this seems like there's a few different sheets and stuff that are around, and I kind of want to make sure I'm looking at the right source. But other than that, I think we'll be soon able to move to cleaning that up.
That's fantastic. That was a healthy dent in the steps that you were thinking about. And so maybe at our September meeting, not the finished copy, but we can show whatever we've done to date and what we're thinking about for both subgroups. And then Kelly has asked for more time with the metrics subgroup to discuss the next wave of things. But at the next one, I'll make note to present just what we have to date so that both groups can provide feedback. Seems like we're running ahead of the timeline of January 2021, which is even better. Our next piece, any questions about either of the subgroups or next steps from here?
When are the next meetings for the subgroups?
So at the next MCE meeting, which I think is September 8th, I've proposed, that is when I'm hoping we can do at least one more subgroup section after the whole group meeting to discuss next steps and to keep working on the actual resource guides or the spreadsheet. So at our next meeting is the hope. Okay. A hot topic right now, which I know impacts all of us in different ways, is the big decision that was made for CMS to kick off remote, and for many school districts to kick off with remote learning. And our Matthews neighbors and our fellow community members are all being impacted in different ways, as we are as well. So Jeff has been in touch with just a couple of, I believe it's the preschools, that we're trying to think of ways that we can help our community. And what I was hoping with for this group and for our goals for today is for Jeff to kick off with just what he's hearing from his standpoint, and also for us to discuss, I know we're just a committee, but are there ways that we can support or navigate this unique time, this unprecedented times with schools? Jeff, do you mind sharing just about the emails that we've been exchanging?
You're muted, Jeff.
I like muted Jeff better than unmuted Jeff.
As a member of the Municipal Education Advisory Committee, we're concerned with the late decision to go to option 3, which was stay at home. how that will impact working families with school-age children. We wanted to be able to offer working parents a viable option for childcare so that they can return to work. And what I'm going to try to go through tonight is a letter from MEAC to CMS, as well as the laws that CMS apply or have to follow, as well as a reply. So it's maybe 3 presentations, and I'll try to be as short as I possibly can. Childcare is heavily regulated. It can take months to be approved. So many in the community are respectfully requesting that the Department of Health and Human Services help by expediting the licensing applications. Let's be clear, we're not looking to bypass or evade any existing protocols, particularly those involving like background checks for the workers, because we want all children in our care to be safe or their care to be safe, but we want to be able to offer child care on the fly as quickly as possible because the need is urgent. Now think of it for a minute. There are a lot of big rooms or big buildings that used to house employees or schools or arenas or auditoriums that could be used. Some are public schools, some are town-owned, and some are private. So if you think outside the box, there's a lot of empty spaces. So we're asking, MEAC is asking to change the pre-licensure workshops from in-person to online. They're asking to reduce the cost of those types of trainings because of reduced costs on behalf of Health and Human Services. In other words, it's paperless, there's no mileage, there's no office expense, etc. And they recommend to allow municipal or town-owned park and recreation operated camps to continue for 4 months per calendar year, in addition to the 4 months that's normally considered summer. They want to expand that going into the fall as a parachute or a safety net. They want to allow expedited childcare for school-age children to be available within our communities on a temporary basis. It doesn't have to be permanent, and so that they can bridge the gap until schools can reopen. The centers would be small and designed to serve the children of our community so that their parents can re-enter the workforce. That's one of the goals, as many of our families are struggling with the impacts of the shutdown. And we want to be able to offer them an opportunity to earn a living during the crisis. That was part of what the letter stated, and it was written by Jennifer De La Hara, who's chair of MEAC and also on the school board, okay? And the laws state that for school-age children, if they're on public school buildings during periods of remote learning, it has to be overseen by support staff or a third party. Public schools are exempt from the definition of child care. So the point there being, if you have it at school, you don't have to have a licensure. So if you use an auditorium, a cafeteria for remote learning, it doesn't need to be licensed. So there's a sort of a semi loophole, but there's a bit of bureaucracy going on in there and some hurdles to jump. As public schools are exempt from the definition of childcare and therefore exempt from the licensure requirements. If public schools choose to provide a remote learning environment for students during the school day in public school buildings, this is considered to be a public school, even though it's remote learning and exempt from childcare licensure. However, there's an argument that there's a question about who gets to use public school facilities and who does not. Hopefully, we can eventually find a blend of community and public school facilities so that every child can be safely clustered meaning they're practicing safe distancing from other students as well. And so we need a little bit more of a definition of if there's a third party involved, no matter who that is. How would you utilize the schools? Who's responsible? Is there liability involved? But in looking out for the parents, we have to find out a way where parents can perhaps go back to work, students can learn, but a seventh grader might be okay with a laptop, but a second grader is not. So the supervision is needed. If it's different at a school auditorium than it is at a community center that's owned by the town, how can we get by that? And so Christ Our Shepherd Ministries is one of the local nonprofits who's looking to expand their daycare and find other rooms or auditoriums where they can expand their remote learning centers. And that's as concise as I'm able to be. Thank you.
Any initial feedback about that?
That it's
Which
a great
is
idea,
rich.
but it's a great idea. I just don't know that we have the right leadership. I'm not talking about this group. I'm talking about CMS, in my impression, is rather afraid to pull a trigger on allowing students to come back. And they're very, very nervous about the liabilities involved, yet the parents and the people who need to go back to work are trying to find a common solution.
Mm-hmm.
How do y'all feel about it?
So what if parents could be requested to sign a waiver where it's like, I understand that I'm increasing risk of exposure by sending my child to this environment. Could that alleviate then some of that liability?
And on that same line of the waiver piece, could it include also, to my ability, I've pre-checked with a temperature check, or that they're not existing evident symptoms of sniffling, fever, whatever the side effects are. So it's twofold. That's what I was going to ask too. The waiver covering the liability piece, but also parents acknowledging that they've checked their boxes in order for it to be safe for their child to attend.
And a lot of those waivers are being done every day in the workplace and in every medical facility, whether you're going in for a checkup or a basic procedure. There's always a temperature check on your forehead, etc. So I think the hurdles can be jumped, except it's easier if we achieve this in a public school than in a community center owned by the town of Matthews, for example, because they might need to be licensed. So I'm not sure of the answer just yet, but everybody's scrambling to protect the parents and the children and allow options, because it was going to be 2 weeks in and orientation and then back to home. And it was switched to option 3 rather rapidly. And we're not too far out. 5 days, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing, Jeff, that's really important is just the affordability. If we did something like this, it would have to be low cost, obviously not for profit or anything like that. Because I'm in that boat, as a parent, I've been calling every school I could think of. And I mean, some of the quotes I was getting for Logan and Haley, who's 5 and 3, was $2,000 a month. And I'm that's more than 3/4 of my paycheck just to put them in childcare. And I ended up, making a selection because I had no other choice. But something like this, I think it would make a world of a difference for parents.
And then there's the specifics of will you be bringing your child with a laptop, and what type of equipment and lunch or anything like that would be involved. It's a lot tougher than we ever anticipated, isn't it?
Yeah, I will say that I don't feel like I can contribute much to that part of it. I think when I read the email Aaron sent out and listened, like I see myself in the town, many people in the town of Matthews being able to kind of contribute once there is a structure. Like I used to run a mentor program. I've been thinking like, well, I can't help during the day, but I could help in the evening. And like, I'd be willing to socially distance meet with a group of high school kids at this, I think there are a lot of other options that like town members can help volunteer with organization or helping give teachers breaks or that sort of thing. But I think there's a reason schools are closed all over the nation, and it's because these logistics are impossible and staffing is impossible. You're just not going to find enough staff to do this. So I think the only thing that I would say, Jeff, is like, how do you make like a rank order of like who gets in? Like, it's not going to be for everyone. We have to make it super small. And like, is it based on income? Is it based on need? Like, I don't know how you do that, but those are my thoughts.
I'm kind of wondering, Jeff, I'm sorry, you're talking. Jeff, were you talking on mute?
I'm sorry. I was just going to say I didn't realize I muted myself again, but I think it's going to end up being a next door neighbor or something pretty soon, just like friendly daycare, just as a parachute. Go ahead, Adam.
I guess I'm kind of wondering, in an ideal scenario, okay, CMS would, in their business continuity planning prior to the buildup of this, recognizing that we'd had other smaller outbreaks, it didn't go pandemic, so I get it, but hindsight 2020, we explore a lot of different scenarios in business continuity planning. And I've done it for a Fortune 50 company, so I know. When in this type of situation, it would be more ideal to have multiple options, that for those who have either a medical accommodation or prefer the option to be completely remote, awesome. And that we then provide some way with additional, resources. I just don't know how you pivot, with a system. It's very easy with one school. I could take one school of this many hundred students and pivot it. You're talking about serving every single part of, a system. It's very big. And I don't think that's, I think CMS tends to have a very much an all or nothing kind of a approach, it seems, with how they've addressed. So
True.
I like it. I wish that it was part of their continuity planning for those parents who work. I'm very fortunate and I feel very, very blessed that, I work a job where I can work from home. You're seeing me right now, same place I've been pretty much all day, for work, and I can do this from home. But I know a lot of people, single moms, things like that. You've got kids, you have to go to work. You don't have the luxury of being virtual. You're trying to get your kids cranked up to take online classes. It's a pretty massive undertaking. And if they were able to elect to a physical with spaces that allowed for that, that would be awesome. But seems like we're kind of behind the ball on being able to do that if we're not part of that initial planning.
Agree.
I know that Community in Schools is a resource that specifically supports families that are in need. Do they have a tiered system of the students they support? I wonder if, I know that's confidential information, but I just wonder if there's any way that they could partner with helping to provide opportunities, at least for the town of Matthews residents.
What's the name of that organization, Erin? I haven't heard that.
Community in Schools. when I was within CMS at a Title I school, at both of my Title I schools, they were the resource within there that partnered with students who were in whatever the tier is, and I can't identify it, where they brought food for them and provided extra after school support, and they were within that tiered system. And I wonder if that there's some sort of partnership for it.
Yeah, we've got a couple of staff members that we've assigned to kind of take the lead on this, that were engaging with CMS amongst some other things. So I'll definitely pass along that organization to them. I'm not sure, they might be 3 steps ahead of me. I just haven't heard it come up in our conversations. Because as staff, the best that we could really come up with was, children who received free and reduced lunch. But, at the same time, we immediately thought of all of the challenges that kind of creates of kids where maybe their parents are now out of work and they didn't previously qualify, or, were there other factors at play as far as, somebody might be employed, but has to, if they're a nurse or having to leave the home, they're technically employed. They absolutely need that option of sending their child somewhere, but they wouldn't show up on any list as far as from an income standpoint. So, you could argue that maybe they would have access to more options because they might have more capital, but sometimes that's not always the case either. So, we've really been grappling with it. And just to kind of fill this group in a little bit, in looking at it from a staff perspective at our town facilities, obviously they're not designed for this, so we're somewhat limited. We've kind of mapped out, if you socially distance and are kind of maneuvering around some other things that are already scheduled and booked at some of the facilities, we think at best we might have room for 75 children at town facilities, but we would need to reserve some of those spots for employees' children, which creates a whole other set of complications because not all of those children go to CMS. But if we had maybe 30 spots for employees' children, that might only leave 40 or 45. So it doesn't feel like a really big needle mover when we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of children potentially. So they are, to Jeff's point, also running down this potential angle with using CMS facilities. But staffing is also a major thing for us. Is, we don't have folks employed that can pivot to provide this kind of care. So there would be a hiring component to this that we would also need to jump on. That certainly we're willing to do, but can we find people? We don't know. And we talked about needing to actually overstaff because you're going to need some backup in case somebody goes out sick or, has to go out on a precautionary quarantine of, you can't then say, oh, sorry, we can't, have 20 of you for the next 2 weeks. You're going to have to figure something else out. So kind of building in some of those overages. I think bluntly from an optics standpoint, I think it's going to be a real challenge with CMS. I think it's going to be, my opinion, really difficult for them to overcome. If it's too dangerous to hold school in person, how do you overcome then agreeing to let other people use the school facilities? Even if you signed waivers or that kind of thing, I think it opens them up to a lot of criticism. There's also a nuance that I heard Ernest Winston mention, Jeff, or some of the others, you're maybe familiar with this, but I think there's a nuance where when the school is closed, there's some kind of requirement that you can't actually be in it. And so there was something that they were having to work around that I think we even learned with some of our summer camps that we are typically holding in the schools in a normal summer, that there was some nuance, like no staff is there on Fridays. And so there was this weird workaround that they had to figure out because otherwise they wouldn't be allowed in the school at all. So how do you how do you allow, say, the town of Matthews to come into your school without any of your school staff there with this other requirement that it sounded like it was something that was over and above CMS's level of control of having to comply with that rule. But I'm sorry, I'm not super familiar with what it is. I just heard Ernest mention it, and and our staff confirmed that they had dealt with that with some other uses of the school. So a lot to navigate.
What did we say was the holdup with community centers and utilizing those spaces? Because I even know with churches, depending on the phases that we're in, they can't necessarily open in some regards also. What was it with the community room or house?
They have to have a license,
Center.
DHHS.
Yeah, there are requirements as far as being able to operate a certain number of hours. And so the last we heard, if we wanted to utilize our community centers for longer than 4 hours a day, and I think for longer than 4 months, and we did offer some summer camps, so we would need to go down this path, that we would have to actually sign a contract with CMS that I think allows us to essentially lob on to their exemption that gets us around having to qualify under the childcare licensure requirements, so that it's kind of a loophole that allows you to not have to get the full-fledged childcare licensure, but CMS has to agree to that with you, is my understanding of it. So we would need them to essentially sign a contract allowing us to use their exemption in our facilities.
Okay.
And not to throw another problem out there, but I think another realistic problem, especially for the community centers, is for those younger grades, like kindergarten, first, second, even third grade. I mean, if we opened up these rooms for them, like these age ranges are not going to just sit there with a tablet in front of them. Even if somebody's going to like help them get on Zoom or help them get on Canvas, like they're not going to have the attention span to sit there for 6-7 hours, without some type of like center play or, like mental break.
I know that the JCC of Charlotte is offering some daily resource for remote learners and for parents who are working. I believe it filled up really quickly, but I know that they are our community center and CJP. It's a school, but the community center portion of it is offering day-long care. And I don't know if that's a resource worth tapping into for how they found their way around it and navigated it.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of, Facebook ads and things like that, and emails from these companies like Soccer Shots is running an all-day thing in their indoor facility where, you can bring the device and we'll kind of walk around and try to make sure the kid's on task. And then, 1 o'clock, we all play soccer. So and I've seen things, the Flower Power, which my daughter goes to for cooking camps. They're also trying to do an all-day thing. But it's interesting. I don't know how they're getting around. I mean, they are businesses that operate as all-day camps during the summer, but the legality of the all-day options for some of those might actually be kind of sketchy.
And they're looking to extend that 4-month summer break to extend it 4 more months until schools can reopen. That was one of the conditions in the letter. It's a tough spot for young parents right now.
Any other collective thoughts or feedback?
I think as we're exploring these, it's not going to be an either or. I think it's going to all of the above. Any little bit will be able to help. Because I was like, even if we were to figure out ways to open up some of these facilities, you're still looking at a drop in the well. Even thinking like Matthews Elementary, you got the cafeteria, it's kind of small, the gym is kind of small, maybe the library, but it's still relative to how many students would normally be packed in that campus on a daily basis. It's a drop in the well. Even in the email that Becky sent us today, that even some of the if we had 4-hour options, I'm lucky enough we've arranged care for our children. But if I didn't, and it was nothing or 4 hours in the morning, I can actually get some work done, and then I gotta take over full-time caregiving. That would be a huge thing, in that situation.
And to that point, our Parks and Recreation staff has a survey out right now for parents of trying to ascertain the level of interest or need. And I think they have been surprised at the results that they've seen so far. It's still open, but what they were really hearing was that at least last I heard, about 75% of respondents said that they were really only looking for partial kind of relief programming, which, we're a little torn because we understand there's this segment of the population that surely needs the full day and maybe struggling to fund full day, but we're not in the full day education business by nature, and our Parks and Recreation staff, they're programmers. And so, I think it's very easy to be drawn to, well, if 75% says we just want partial day and it's just the fun and it's the relief and it's getting the kids out of the house and getting a little break for mom and dad, to not kind of run in that direction, because we know that world, and yes, it would be a little bit different with COVID, but that's something that I think that we could do and be very successful at, and probably churn more children through over the course of a semester than, okay, we only have 40 spots and everyone else we just can't really do anything for. So we're trying to navigate that of, do you help a couple deeply, or do you kind of appeal to the greater masses and do a broader array of programming that might help people in a different way? And I don't know that we'll have much time or ability to really do both. So we're trying to navigate that as well.
Becky, I was just going to type it, but I'll just say it. I think I would say think about doing the yes and, like, do that Parks and Rec that your people are good at, but then try to have like a smaller, like a 15 instead of 40, like a 15, like just who are the people. Back when I ran my mentor program, my principal would say, if you change one kid's life, that's one kid's life that got changed. So it might seem like 10 kids wouldn't be that much if you were doing a small cohort, but for those 10 kids and 10 kids' families, it would be the world. So.
The starfish principle, right?
Yeah. And I will just say, like, whenever you're ready for the town to put out a survey of like, how can the community help? Like, I was a dance teacher, I'm a biology teacher. Like, I know I've already been saying in my brain, like, well, my husband could watch the kids and I could go do an hour to relieve staff and I'll do a dance class outside, or I'll meet a high school bunch of kids in the parking lot, wherever, and talk biology or just talk to them. Like, I think we have to, if you're willing to think about those like middle school and high school kids of what they need, because they don't necessarily need someone making sure they sit on Zoom, but they need someone to talk to them. They need someone to talk to them. And there are so many of us who, like, after 7:30, like, I'll go bring a camping chair and sit in a church parking lot and talk to kids, because that's what they need. I mean, I've been in the high school world for a long time, and they don't need anyone tutoring them. They need someone to talk to them. And I'm sorry Dane's not on the call, because I know that's his actual expertise. But
the one thing that I do like that CMS is doing is they're starting all of their classes off with a 40-minute social emotional lesson. So, because for that exact reason, Joanna, like, kids are going through a lot right now. Like, they just need to talk about their feelings and what they've been going through. So, like, I know that is district-wide.
Do we have any numbers quantifying like the percentage of CMS students or CMS families to which like the mobile option is just not a fit? Like, do we know if that's 26% of the CMS population? So, you know, if you had a school or a couple schools that were at quarter capacity, and what are the legal requirements for them to have a school open? You know, would they have to have the cafeteria running? Would they have to have a nurse? Because I would be seriously concerned about staffing.
So Adam, I don't think there's any number, but I was going to say I think you can get a general idea from looking at who originally registered for full remote, which was about a third of CMS families originally registered for full remote on their own. So I think that gives you a general idea of about a third of the people were like, I can do this remote thing, and I'm good at it. And I think that tells you that at least 67% are like, well, I don't want remote.
That's accurate. I got numbers from Charles Jeter, who represents CMS, and it was about a third, back to school, remote, and hybrid. And he was arguing or debating the fact that no matter what decision they make, 2/3 of the people aren't going to like it. I
have to tell you, we kicked off with saying everyone with not offering a remote option, and it was a nightmare. And it's division specific. Shockingly, 25% of my lower school is pure remote, kicking off the year, and I'm the highest one out of all three divisions. Middle school, some middle school parents may not be surprised with this one, but they're the lowest with remote learning. Most parents wanted their kids on campus. I think they were at about 13% overall. And then upper was closer to me at 20%. So just we were very surprised by the lower school numbers that wanted the remote piece. But I do wonder, community and schools I bet they have an idea of numbers just even in specific to the Matthews area, because that's the data point that they utilize to do next steps and to support students within the different schools.
I think data is always great, but I think with school starting next week, like if this is something that's really going to make a difference for families, like I feel like the sooner we could get something like this up and running, the better. So like Joanna, I know you said offer like a smaller cohort option for that extra kids, but I almost think, Becky, if we have the resources to do like a half day, like a 4-hour option for families, like just take off running with that, because like Jay said, like a little bit is so much better than nothing. And at least then you could get it, up and going that much quicker.
And it could serve as a pilot too. It could serve as a pilot with the smaller groups, so that if it goes well, if you're able to physically distance, if the procedures are smooth enough, that you'd be able to open it up to more as well, or for a longer period of time. That is correct. I mean, I do think it goes a very long way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the realistic answer is I can't see this being in place before school starts, given that we're 5 days out, and with having to get agreements from CMS. We've never had to do that before, so we're not sure what all is entailed with that. But trying to navigate, are there requirements with transportation, the food, staffing? We've got a lot. So I think we obviously know that we're under a lot of pressure to move as fast as possible, but also, it is health and, livelihoods. And so we need to get it right the first time as well, and make sure that it's something that we can realistically take on before we offer it. I think the last thing we need is it blowing up in our face, or having things go poorly. So it's trying to thread that needle and figure out that balance. So yeah, so we want to get it up as quick as we can, but unfortunately, 5 days, there's just not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Even if mid-semester, that's better than, I don't know when that is for CMS. I guess it's after the first quarter or whatever it is. Even if that's an offering, then it goes a long way. And I am glad whatever resources we've used from the operational side, I will throw them all and offer them in that standpoint. The staggered start, the protocols with reducing risk that we've done within the classroom, the physical spacing. I have thousands of ideas that I could throw out if you end up having a space and personnel to support it.
Sure, thank you.
One of the other challenges that Christ Our Shepherd Ministries suggested was that the background checks are tedious, and their background checks are fingerprint based, and it was taking 2 to 3 months to get results back. And I lifted up to them that I do background checks and am authorized to do criminal background checks just because I'm a property manager and a landlord. And they said that wouldn't be good enough according to the regulations. So getting the qualified personnel was one of their bigger hurdles, and that's why some of these letters have been written.
Is that something CMS could offer assistance with from an HR standpoint and whatever resources they use if we're supporting students that attend there?
I would think so.
Yeah. Anything else connected to the remote learning piece? And I know Jenny shared, how is everyone navigating it within their households, if you wish to share, because I think that might help for this group as well.
I'm kind of thinking that I don't know how the current thing. I think we're going to go through just a period of pain. I think until there's a vaccine here, I just think this is everybody trying to figure out things that work. And yeah, you're right. 10 students is 10 more students, and we could it's 10 lives we can impact. And I get that, but at the same time, I'm sort of feeling like there's going to be a large number that's going to be stuck in this mode of like credit recovery kind of stuff or skill recovery in order to get back on track. When we flash forward, could be a year still. I think we're probably talking realistically spring before they have a vaccine that's actually being rolled out to the public, and it's probably going to not be a one-time deal, right? So if we talk a year from now, we're going to have a whole group, thousands and thousands of students across our region that are going to be either in learning recovery or credit recovery mode. And I can say, for example, my own daughter, she's struggled, look, I can tell you all day, I've worked with virtual learning stuff since the 90s, so I can write a book about it. But the reality is the learner experience from a system is trying to transition in an emergency is not the same as entering into an online program that's really governed for that and set up for that. It's a very different experience for them, and they struggle. So while we may have all the best intentions to help the 10 people, I am kind of looking at in a year, what is our strategy as a town of Matthews to put resources in place to help students get back on the right track? I know maybe I'm thinking too far ahead, but I'm sort of eyeing the recovery model because we're all, whether we're physically sick or systematically sick, we're all sick right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. Just for me personally, I feel a little bit lucky. I am working from home, been home since March, and my kids are older, right? I have a junior at Butler, so she's 16, and I have a sixth grader starting at Crestdale, so she's 11. So they're pretty good with being able to work on their own, which thank goodness, because I have to work all day. But I will tell you that even in my experience, like I said, I feel pretty blessed, but, we bought new desk, new bookcase, new chair, because my entire house is being turned into a remote health clinic and a middle school and a high school. My daughter's art elective is dance. Yeah, okay, that's fun. And my other daughter's art elective is ceramics. So my kitchen table is a ceramic studio, my living room is a dance studio, and I now have 2 desks because I'll have to sit down here. And then when they're in dance and ceramics, I'm going to have to go upstairs. So my entire house has been rearranged as far as furniture. And I feel pretty lucky, that I've had the resources to be able to buy a new desk, right? And to do things like that. But it's stressful. I work 40 hours a week all day. And I got 3 CMS phone calls, 2 texts, 2 emails. CMS, y'all, I don't have time to keep up with you. I work all day, right? So it's the amount of extra work that they're placing on parents right now. Like, parents, you got to get on Canvas. Parents, you got to get on PowerSchool. Parents, you have to do this. Parents, you have to do that. No. I'm on phone all day with patients, right? Like, I can't stop patient care because I have to go help my kid with, it's a lot. I'm pretty stressed, right? So we got, a full semester of this. We're doing full remote for the entire first semester. So, it's a lot. So even for families that have a lot of resources to be working, so even for families that are working from home, it's not like families that are able to work from home just get a check. It's just as much rearranging and craziness and, oh my goodness, I'm trying to work, but I got to go help you. And all 3 of us have different lunch times. And yeah, it's just, it's stressful. But, we're just, like Adam said, but even with all of that stress I'm feeling, I feel very, very blessed to be in the situation and that they're older. Even imagine what parents of young kids are going through right now, whether they're at work or whether they're not at work. Even if you're trying to work from home and you got a kindergartner, yeah, there's no way. There's no way that's happening. So it's just stressful all in all. That's all I got to say.
And that was another thing I thought about is if we do, the age piece, prioritizing a certain age piece, if there is an option for the town of Matthews to do something, possibly prioritizing these younger ones where it's childcare in addition to some really foundational school skills, learning to read, phonics, all that, considering prioritizing a particular age group. They're all important, but the childcare piece is the huge part that I know is impacting all of us. It's the mental health piece again that I think all of you spoken to is how are we helping people take care of themselves? Okay. Well, that's it for the agenda items for today. I hope that these were helpful resources, Becky, and to everyone and to Jeff, just from our initial brainstorm. And again, if it's somehow pulled off, I will do whatever I can to share what we're giving a try next week. We kick off on Tuesday. So we can go from there. Okay, anything else for the greater cause? Within the agenda, there are our next 2 meeting dates, September 8th, which is when we'll utilize the subgroups again to partner together, but also come together whole group for any other items. Okay.
I'll try to follow up with CMS as time permits and as I feel maybe their pressure is relieved to see if I can get the other data for the missing schools.
Yes, and I know, Kelly, you requested one of those for something from me as well that I'll get to you when we hang up. Okay.
Thank you.
I motion to adjourn this meeting.
Someone say second.
I'll second
Please.
it.
Okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay. Take care. Be safe, be well, everyone, and take care.
Thank you for all you do
Thank
for the
you.
family.
Thank you.